March 2021, a message slid through the encrypted network trusted by some of the most careful criminals in Europe. Just 8 words. The package from our Scottish brother is ready. It read like logistics, routine, almost forgettable. But to investigators, it was the beginning of the end. Within weeks, British police greenlit one of the most aggressive operations in modern UK law enforcement history. 16 addresses across Manchester, Birmingham, and London were marked for dawn raids. Helicopters overhead, armed teams stacked in silence outside front doors. Then, the green light. The target? A man named Pasalica Paz Naufahu, a former enforcer for the Comancheros. He'd been deported from Australia in 2018 under Section 501 of the Migration Act. Since then, he'd kept a low profile, rented a modest flat in Moss Side. To police, he was the face of the Comancheros British chapter, the assumed leader of a drug empire worth over £30 million. But when officers forced their way into his apartment, they didn't find what they expected. No war room, no staff, no ledgers, just 2 kilos of cocaine, a stack of cash, and one man, alone, asleep and calm. That's when doubt began to spread, because while Paz looked like the boss, everything pointed elsewhere. The phone records, the financials, the encrypted messages, they all led back to a name no one had even considered. A man with no criminal record, no gang tattoos, no violent history, and no reason to be on any watch list at all. His name was Daniel Morrison. For 3 years, he'd been operating in plain sight, building one of the most efficient drug trafficking systems in British history without ever touching the product, or drawing a weapon, or setting foot near a gang. Miss the button? Go ahead, subscribe now so you don't forget later, because what you're about to see isn't just a crime story, it's the anatomy of a system, and the man who designed it, like a business plan. March 15, 2018, Terminal 2, Manchester Airport. A man steps off a red-eye Virgin Australia flight. No luggage. Just a black duffel bag and a one-way deportation order stamped under Section 501 of Australia's Migration Act. His name? Pasalica Naufahu. But those who knew him from the other side of the world called him Paz. He wasn't just another deportee. He wasn't unwanted because of immigration violations or expired paperwork. He was pushed out because he posed an ongoing threat to public safety. Under Section 501, Australian authorities can deport non-citizens if they fail what's called the character test. And Paz, a senior figure in the Comancheros Motorcycle Club with a reputation for enforcement, failed it by miles. But here's the twist. They didn't realize it, but Australia had just exported its problem directly into Britain's bloodstream. Paz had been one of the most feared sergeant-at-arms in the Southern Hemisphere. He wasn't flashy, he didn't rant on social media, he didn't need to. His reputation was silent and terrifying. When the Comancheros moved into a new territory, it wasn't with fanfare, it was with precision. So when Paz landed in Manchester, he wasn't just looking for a place to crash. He was planting a flag. A flat in Moss Side was all he needed. Cheap, quiet, quick steel. And completely off radar. From there, Paz wasn't building an army, he was building infrastructure. And this time, the mission wasn't about violence or domination, it was about scale. He wasn't interested in turf wars. He didn't want young gang members waving flags, he wanted professionals. People who understood logistics, finance, encryption, and risk. Why? Because Paz wasn't here to push drugs in back alleys, he was here to create a supply chain. But here's what makes it even more disturbing. According to UK law enforcement records from later court proceedings, no one tracked his arrival. Not Special Branch, not Border Force, not even Greater Manchester Police. He entered the country like any other passenger. Quiet, legal, forgotten. Let that sink in. Australia removed a known criminal to protect its public, and without knowing it, handed him the launchpad for one of the most profitable drug operations in modern British history. For the first few months, Paz moved like a ghost. He didn't throw parties, he didn't recruit loudly, he simply watched ports, watched business owners, watched patterns, and then, somewhere in late summer, he found him, the man who would turn a flat in Moss Side into the control tower of a 30-million-pound drug empire. But here's the strange part. This man wasn't a gangster. He wasn't even a criminal. He was a logistics consultant in his late 30s who'd recently walked away from a six-figure job in commercial shipping. Quiet, precise, no known associations with anyone shady. So what did Paz see in him? Was it weakness, opportunity, or something far more calculated? Because within 6 months of touching down in the UK, Paz didn't just have a contact, he had a partner. A man with a clean record, a deep understanding of the UK's shipping architecture, and something far more dangerous than violence: efficiency. You ever wonder how many dangerous people walk into a country every year with no one watching? What happens when deportation becomes relocation? And what if the most dangerous thing about a man is that he doesn't need to make noise? September 2018. A quiet pub in Manchester. 2 men sit across from each other, one tattooed and known to police, the other clean-cut, buttoned up, and invisible. One of them is Pasalika Naufahu, the other is Daniel Morrison. He's 38, ex-logistics coordinator for a major UK shipping company. He used to plan cargo movement across Europe. Ports, customs, warehouse delays. He knew how to thread containers through the UK's busiest entry points like clockwork. He had no record, no gang ties, no alerts on any law enforcement database. And until that moment, he had no reason to be watched. But Paz wasn't offering gang colors or street-level turf. What he pitched was something Morrison hadn't heard before: a logistics empire, just one with higher margins and fewer rules. The details of that first meeting would only emerge years later, but investigators now believe it wasn't random. Morrison had been researched, profiled, and approached for a reason. He'd just gone through a divorce. He had mounting debts. And he knew exactly how to move freight across the country without drawing attention. He wasn't recruited. He was calculated into the plan. And when he said yes, something changed. Paz may have arrived to establish a gang, but Morrison, he started building a supply chain. Within months, they had their first system up and running. The model was terrifying in its simplicity. Cocaine hidden inside legitimate cargo, bags of coffee beans, crates of construction materials. Sometimes even insulation foam. Containers that appeared ordinary to customs. Paperwork that matched shipping manifests to the hour. 2 containers a month, each loaded with 200 to 400 kilograms of pure cocaine. Street value? Between 8 and 15 million pounds per shipment. No guns, no runners, no violence. Just data, schedules, and clean business fronts. Quick reminder, if you're still watching, hit the like button. It helps more than you know. By early 2019, this wasn't just a working route. It was a machine. Customs flagged nothing. The cargo passed every inspection, and the money started flowing, faster than either man could have imagined. What no one realized was that Morrison wasn't taking orders from Paz. He was quietly taking over, because while Paz handled the appearances, the biker image, the local recruitment, the public face, Morrison was running point on logistics, scheduling, finance, and risk management. And he didn't just want to smuggle. He wanted to scale. You ever wonder how many people you've walked past who knew exactly how to move 15 million pounds worth of drugs and look like they work in IT? How do you catch someone who doesn't look like a criminal, doesn't act like a criminal, and builds his empire like a startup? By 2020, the network was no longer just running, it was replicating. What started with 2 containers in Manchester had now become a pipeline stretching across 4 cities. Manchester, Birmingham, London, Liverpool, each with its own contacts, its own offloading zones, and its own distribution strategy. But here's the key. They didn't conquer new ground with threats. There were no gang wars, no standoffs, no bloodshed. Morrison had something better. He offered partnerships, not just product, infrastructure. His shipments were clean, reliable, on schedule, and in the underworld, that's worth more than loyalty. Local networks didn't resist. They bought in. Because Morrison's supply was not only better, it was safer. No one had ever seen a system so refined. And while street gangs chased territory, Morrison created a franchise model. It wasn't just criminal, it was corporate. At the center of it all, money. And Morrison knew exactly how to clean it. He created dozens of shell companies across the UK and Ireland, property development firms, car wash chains, import-export businesses with real client rosters. Each company filed genuine taxes, issued official invoices, and passed regulatory checks without a single red flag. Drug money didn't disappear, it was converted, injected into these businesses as consulting fees, investments, and supplier payments. On paper, everything looked above board. In practice, millions were being laundered without a trace. By the end of 2020, the Manchester pipeline alone was moving £8 million per month. And that's just what investigators could confirm later. Yet through all of this, Morrison kept himself completely hidden. No front-facing role, no street presence, no intercepted calls. He left the visibility to Paz. To police and rival gangs, Paz looked like the one running the show, hosting meetings, making introductions, showing face. But behind the scenes, the actual command chain ran one way, up to Morrison. And the most terrifying part, he didn't just build it for himself. He built it to last. He wasn't running a smuggling ring. He was scaling a model. The kind of model that could be handed off, duplicated, franchised, or sold. One that didn't depend on loyalty, just process. So here's the question. If a man can move millions in cocaine using real businesses and never fire a shot, is he still a drug trafficker, or is he something worse? May 2021, France, an elite cybercrime unit working out of Lille breaks into the unbreakable. EncroChat, an encrypted communications network used by 60,000 people across the globe. Most of them criminals, cartels, gun runners, drug syndicates. But tucked between cartel codenames and street-level chatter, British analysts notice something different. A message thread that looks like logistics, inventory counts, schedules, forecasts. Except these forecasts aren't for business deliveries, they're for kilos of cocaine. The language is clean, professional, no slang. No threats, no panic, just cold corporate updates. And buried deep in the file tree, an internal nickname, Cargo. It takes just 6 weeks to piece it together. The shipping routes, the timelines, the aliases, and then the name, Daniel Morrison. He hadn't made a single mistake until the system he trusted most turned on him. July 3, 2021, 6:15 a.m. The UK moves. Operation Retribution is launched across 4 cities, 16 locations, simultaneous raids. Police in full tactical gear. First target, Paz. Officers breach his Moss Side flat. They find £180,000 in cash. 2 kilos of cocaine, burner phones, encrypted drives, but no war room, no planning center, no strategy. Just Paz, half asleep, barefoot, calm. Then the real hit, Didsbury, South Manchester. Officers enter a Georgian townhouse. No resistance, no weapons, no panic. Inside, an executive office, whiteboards covered in shipment schedules, maps of port routes, handwritten financial projections, expense logs, competitor analysis, everything labeled, everything logged, every shipment, every cut, every risk, calculated down to the hour. This wasn't a stash house, it was a boardroom for crime. And the man sitting at the desk, wearing a dress shirt and a wristwatch, Daniel Morrison. You're still here? Do what you meant to do earlier, subscribe. Because what happens next isn't justice, it's a lesson in how organized crime learned to stop looking like crime and started looking like a business plan. March 15, 2022. 4 years to the day since Paz stepped off that flight at Manchester Airport. Inside Courtroom 2 at Manchester Crown Court, both men sit side by side, silent. No outbursts, no protests, just quiet acknowledgement that the plan had ended. The verdict? Paz, 12 years. Morrison, 18. One of the longest sentences ever handed down for a UK-based drug trafficking conspiracy. And then came the statement. No emotion, no remorse. Just a line Morrison had prepared, delivered with the same professionalism he used to run his empire. "I apologize for any inconvenience this matter may have caused." That wasn't a confession, it was a press release. Because Morrison didn't see himself as a kingpin, he saw himself as a CEO. He wasn't a criminal, he was an operator. And for nearly 4 years, he ran circles around every surveillance unit Britain had. When the National Crime Agency traced his assets, they found more than expected. £12.4 million, hidden across 14 bank accounts, spread across 7 countries, some under fake names, others tied to fake consultancies, all protected through real legal mechanisms. And that wasn't all. On one of Morrison's encrypted drives, they found expansion plans. Not threats, not territory maps. Business blueprints. 3 cities were marked with timelines and growth targets: Amsterdam, Dublin, Edinburgh. It wasn't theory, it was scheduled. He wasn't trying to escape the UK, he was preparing to scale the model. You ever wonder how many more consultants are sitting behind laptops right now, running numbers, exporting white papers, coordinating shipments, but never touching the product? What Morrison built wasn't just profitable, it was duplicatable, and in his absence, someone else is already using the template. Daniel Morrison didn't carry weapons, he didn't threaten rivals, he didn't flash wealth or violence or fear. He sat at a desk, ran payroll, signed contracts. He didn't run a drug empire, he built one, like a corporate merger. His shell companies still exist, many under new names. Their licenses are valid, their filings are clean, and while Morrison now sits behind bars, his model is still running. Same spreadsheets, same ports, different operators, because what he created wasn't just profitable, it was scalable, outsourceable, replaceable. It wasn't built for chaos, it was built for continuity. Today, police across Europe are still chasing shadows of the system he left behind. The blueprint has spread to Amsterdam, Dublin, Edinburgh, and investigators admit they're not even sure how many of his methods are still in use. Because Morrison didn't act like a criminal. He didn't look like one, and he didn't teach like one either. He built a system so clean, so well packaged, that others picked it up the moment he was gone, like opening a franchise manual. So the next time someone tells you they work in logistics, ask yourself, what exactly are they moving?